So what he did, it's an example why I put it. Because this is another trend. Moving from a certain area of work, sector in industry, to actually new areas. This means diversifying your portfolio of products. And this is another example of how in the new age, in the new era, in the new way the economies are functioning, this is setting a different example. And of course we all work through examples.
And just to connect it back to the thought that we had about Albert Einstein, is that today in schools we don't come to have just knowledge, but it's the way of thinking. And this actually comes back also to these examples, because do you think they've learned this in school? Or maybe they just gathered the capacity to think differently? And do you think also this capacity or this skill can be trained? We believe that it can be. Some maybe believe that
but it is a skill.
It is a skill.
It's different from what was believed before, that this is something you are lucky or you're born with.
And
So
this is a
that's
skill.
becoming mainstream. Yes?
You're born with.
Yeah, some people believed very much that you're born with this talent.
But this is not.
You can be a businessman. Sorry?
But that is our...
This is what we're saying, that I don't believe this, but this was a mainstream. I've had major discussions.
Yes.
You will not believe it, but I have had major arguments, wars, with established, very successful bankers in their 70s, 80s, okay, in their age, they're already retired, who are telling me, Milena, this is BS. Sorry for the expression. You know what is BS? Okay. So this is nonsense. It is not possible that somebody can become so successful. And I was arguing, no, this is not a talent to be a business person. It is a skill you acquire, you learn about. What is more difficult is to stimulate the imagination and creativity if it is skilled. And this is another thing that is done in our educational system. So that's why, in a way, courses like that, you might find them, out of the box, too strange, could be. I've even been told sometimes, hey, you're like the Don Quickset, in English, the guy that is really crazy. I don't care, because I really see the difference when you've been exposed to one situation and then another. So, of course, I will not talk about Steve Jobs, because you already said you've been talking about him, you had the battle, but he's an example of how to think different. And actually, the other thing that is very much changing with that approach and with being entrepreneurial in your mind for that, as we said, age, is something that is demonstrated by this, the power of I can, or the thinking that it is not up to somebody, it is in my hands, and this means to be entrepreneurial, in my hands to decide what I want to do or not. And believe it or not, it's all a question of how we process and what kind of mentality we have about everything we do. Because one is related, this is Carol Dweck, is a researcher and professor from Stanford University. She is teaching in the Stanford D School. Do you know what the D School in Stanford is? Design school, engineering design school. And she did this research 2 years ago that came related to the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And the fixed mindset is the one that is very much connected to this. You are either born or not with this quality. And the growth mindset is not related to the fact that you believe in growth, but you believe in the change and in acquiring growth in this sense, in the development, in developing to another person or to what you want through that attitude. And actually, I tell you something which I found interesting. Carol Dweck is at the moment the advisor for Microsoft on the way the company is changing its whole business model and orientation. Because you might think that is not related, but it is very much related. They need to become from a company that is very, because I've worked also with Microsoft, and I tell you, they are at times so bureaucratic because they've grown so big and complacent in who they are, that for them to change one small thing, they actually, it takes them 6 months or a year. And they discovered this is quite of a disadvantage for them in the marketplace. They are no longer so competitive the way they used to be, because no longer the trends and the, the drivers of the economy are the ones that used to be before. So the world, the environment changed from being very stable, predictable, anticipated, with a lot of prognosis, to an environment which is extremely risky, uncertain, unpredictable, insecure, and all of those. In this environment, we come to the mode of operation which is entrepreneurial. That's why it has relevance. It's not because we think it's fancy and kind of sexy to talk to you about being an entrepreneur. It is really very much rooted in the way the reality is now functioning, and how we can respond relevantly to that reality. All right? So one other thing that I found interesting is, let's see, do you think that it will play?
Let's try.
Just, it was a very short interview with...
Okay, wait, let's
okay.
do this. Okay, and then the audio.
I know it's him, but it's related to something else that I wanted to show you.
He laughed, and he gave me the spare parts to the old frequency counter, and he gave me a job that summer at Hewlett-Packard, working on the assembly line, putting nuts and bolts together on free. Anybody that didn't want to help me if I asked him for help. I called up Bill Hewlett when I was 12 years old, and he lived in Palo Alto. His number was still in the phone book. And he answered the phone himself. He said, yes? He said, hi, I'm Steve Jobs. I'm 12 years old. I'm a student in high school, and I want to build a frequency counter. And I was wondering if you had any spare parts I could have. And he laughed, and he gave me the spare parts to build this frequency counter, and he gave me a job that summer at Hewlett-Packard, working on the assembly line, putting nuts and bolts together on frequency counters. He got me a job in the place that built them. And I was in heaven. Most people never pick up the phone and call. Most people never ask, and that's what separates sometimes the people that do things from the people that just dream about them.
Okay, so actually, what do you think is the point of why did I put this? Because of Steve Jobs or for another reason?
What did you read from the video?
What is your conclusion? Or the main point? Tell me.
No, you didn't.
I didn't hear. Yeah? Ask. Yeah.
I think the main point about being an entrepreneur is doing things, and like we talk about it a lot about what it means to be an entrepreneur and what variables influence it. But basically, it comes down to start doing things and it works, adjusting along the road.
Yeah. This and also, it's in the very simple things. It's in everyday things. Because he said, people assume, or people never dare to ask, to follow, to call, to check, or to experience, to do it. And it is from the biggest scale to the small scale. And in fact, the Google people, they had this approach. You know, I tell you one short story that is related to them. When I met Jimmy Wales. Do you know who Jimmy Wales is? Jim Wales? James Wales? Have you ever heard? You did the WikiLeaks battle. But do you know who is the founder of Wikipedia? It's Jimmy Wales. He was before WikiLeaks. Anyhow, I met him at an event, I think it was, 2009. And he was just, he had, Wikipedia was gathering speed, but it was not so successful. And by the way, Wikipedia, he founded, this is his 7th attempt at doing something in the public space. And he founded Wikipedia actually as a social enterprise, because it's a non-profit organization. It is not a company. He has other businesses that are funding this. At the time when he was developing Wikipedia, he had the vision that there should be a space in the internet which provides knowledge and free knowledge to all the people. So it's related to the new era of knowledge becoming one of your assets, a source, capital. So he said, I met him at an event. I went to him in the style like Steve Jobs. Sometimes I just go and I said to him, Jimmy, I would like to invite you. We're doing a big event, my organization in Latin America. It was going to be in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, and I would like to invite you to come and speak to the students and tell them your story. And he said, interesting, I'm usually paid for my presentations and talks. And I said to him, no, this time, you have to do it for free. Either you do it or not. He said, why don't you talk to my manager of this agency? And so I called this guy and I said to him, we would like to invite Jimmy Wales, and he told me to discuss with you his remuneration. And I'm not ready, we're not ready to pay $70,000 for his participation. Because in this event, we want to ask him to show where he failed. And he said, let me talk, Harry Walker was this agency, big agency that hires all of these big, people, stars to go and give talks for money. Let me talk to Jimmy. And okay, there was 2 weeks silence. And I thought, oh my goodness, we didn't, we failed, and they're not responding. I wrote 2 messages to this guy. He didn't respond. And then I picked up the phone and I called Jimmy and I said to him, you promised to me that, you told me that you have this vision, you want to share knowledge, and now you want us to pay, you want us to pay you to talk to students about how you're doing it. It's not really very consistent with what you're preaching. And he told me, okay, Milena, you got me. I come to talk. And he came to our event, and he was really great because this was not so mainstream in 2009, 2010, that people like this would talk to students and to talk like open without any other agenda. But during the event, he one evening was so happy, and I asked him, Jimmy, what's happened? And he said, you know what? There are these two guys, this company Google, you know, it was the Gmail was just picking up and Google were picking up. He said, Sergey Brin called me yesterday and he told me he's giving me 3 million for Wikipedia. I said, wow, that is not a bad thing. He said to me, you know how much this means for me? It's actually a lot. They are my biggest investors. So this is how they work. You know, for me it was actually a true story because I shared this with him. I saw how it was happening. And I saw that, you know, those things that might appear to us very big, in fact, they are very real, simple. They're like what Steve Jobs was saying, you know, sometimes. And if we have this attitude that you believe in something and you want to get it done, this is your approach, it actually happens. It could be rewarded. I'm not saying that it happens all the time with everybody, but if you continue knocking on the door and have that attitude, it happens. And it was just my personal experience, that's why I thought it was relevant to share with you.
It has something to do with this, I don't remember where I picked it up, maybe in TEDx or TED. Someone was saying that school teaches us to be afraid of failing.
Yes, it is everywhere. It has to do with this exactly. And in fact, one other thing that is very important is, especially in Europe, there is a big fear failing, but why? Because it's related to, if you fail, people do not like to take risks. People in Europe were used to having security and stability. And so, if you take risk, there is a risk averseness in the culture. If you take risk and you fail, here you will be more punished. You know, people will start saying, there is a big difference in the US and here on that topic. People will start saying, oh, you know, he didn't manage. And it's not, oh, you know, he tried this and now he's on to the next. Do you see the difference? One is you're branded, didn't manage, failed. The other one is, it is a point of learning, the next step, you know, testing, experimenting. And again, that is part of the educational system. Yes?
But is it considered good or bad the price of the learning? I mean, what I sense or see in statistics, you know, how many startups fail, and from people who try things that fail, that's okay, a good thing, if they in the end manage. But in the process, they waste a lot of money and maybe people, because I also have a friend who is currently having their second startup, and he got just funded again, and I was talking with him, and I was really interested in that talk, and he was like, I was like, you know, how is the company going, how are you? And he was like, it's going, but not so much now. And I was like, aren't you worried or something? He was so, you know, relaxed and stuff like that. He's like, if it's not working, then I will try again. And that's one thing, but again, he's playing with other people's money to whom he made promise, and he has employed. So it's very nice, you know, that there is a people who becomes a
well, this is
company.
yeah.
But until that, before I don't know how much people.
Yeah. In fact, I wasn't talking so much about startups because there seems to be, this is another fashion, you know, and this is the problem because we tend not to get to the point of being entrepreneurial because in a way, in Europe, there aren't that many, the ecosystem, the environment, the culture is not there yet that you can be like in the US in certain places where you start one thing, you follow another, and this is the way you can actually live. In Europe, it's not so much. So in Europe, it's more Okay, you can still work for a bigger company, but you're looking for a company that is entrepreneurial in its nature, has this internal culture that is of that style. And it's happening more and more. Also in America, also in Korea, because, or in Japan or in China, this is how the new mode of working is. For those companies and organizations that are more progressive and that they want to succeed. You're right that there is that fashion about the startup being culture, and there are some people who are just using, profiteering from that trend. This, however, is not sustainable. It will stop. So I'm talking now not so much about when you do the startup lab or the business development lab, we talk about startups. But now we're talking more about the behavior and an attitude. So, right point. So the last point is again related to this, and it's something that I will show you another video. You've heard about the World Economic Forum, right? Have you heard? Do you know what the World Economic Forum is? The World Economic Forum is one of the biggest settings, gatherings of people who are policy makers, industry leaders, company leaders, government institutions and all, who are talking about the trends in economic development and working on policies to help the world advance progress. So recently they've been working a lot in the area of policy making, and they were saying that the trend for jobs and also the trend for economy is moving in the direction of jobs that are based much more on new skills. And the new skills are the ones that are much more common sense. So, and also this is the way artificial intelligence is going to replace, through artificial intelligence, there will be a replacing of jobs related to repetition, pattern, modes that can be predicted, to this type of jobs. And much more, would be much more focus and demand on jobs that involve common sense. And to have common sense, or this is related again to thinking, you need to be able to be creative, to imagine, to be a good communicator. Now this is all common sense, because the robots or let's say, the new automatic people will not be able, they're still not at the level where they can replace fully human beings for the sake of what human beings want. They still have not captured that element where communication is at the core. Jobs where you have to make a decision, to be critical, or to be imaginative, play a bigger role, they cannot yet replicate that. So this will be the new type of jobs and the new skills that will be more and more needed from people in order to succeed. And one of these is related to collaboration and teamwork. And this is the last slide I wanted to show you. Again, that the trend in economy is, especially in technology sector, is that people are slowly, and the whole economy is shifting from the old model, and I think you looked at this when you were studying organizations, right? The hierarchical old model, the pyramid, to a new model of IT. And this new model is called the team of teams, which means it's becoming, the organizations have become much more flat. What does it mean, flat?
You're a computer scientist.
There is a great book by Thomas Friedman called The World is Flat. I recommend it. It's really great.
So what is the difference between the two models? I mean, the pictures are self-explanatory. I hope this will be...
No hard hierarchy.
Sorry?
No hard hierarchy.
Not hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
Yes. And?
Can I say
Yes.
just like more democracy? Because less bureaucracy and more democracy.
Yes. Well, okay, or less bureaucracy in the sense that you have requirements in order to move between layers. And much more democracy in a different way. It's more that you form teams. You have to find within the company, the organizations, people who are share a similar interest, a similar vision on how to work, and you form teams that are much more project-based, and they are the ones that are actually collaborating between each other, rather than having a boss or a supervisor that tells the people below, you know, what is the task, and then they develop the task, and then it's fed back in, you know, in that same manner. So that's why project-based, team-based work, if you look at the culture of Google, of how they're working, they have in their description, more or less, at least 10%, and I think now they even increased it, 15% of time where they have to work, or they're given the opportunity, but they even asked recently to report on it, they worked on their own project that has nothing to do with what, you know, their team is working on. So they're encouraging for them to develop to follow their own ideas, so develop some kind of their own internal, let's say, company, team within the company, and or based on their hobby or area of interest, and also to try to find other partners within the company that are interested in this, in addition to their main work.
And there are some companies like Well who are creating computer games.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely flat structure, and 100% of time they just work on what they want to do, forming the teams within the company.
Well, I didn't know if it's 100%, but maybe, yeah, it's almost 90, maybe 90, yeah. Okay, so let's see, what time is it?
There's been a big news like maybe last year, and there were a few companies that started to adopt this.
All right, so this is the last, is that actually there is, we can break down these different, how to say, set of learning. The learning consists of gathering knowledge, developing skills, and building on attitudes, because this could be the result of the learning and education. So this is kind of a summary up to here. I think I have taken, 1 hour. Right, we took 1 hour to where you were. So my proposal to you is we also can talk a little bit more on Teams and how to maybe watch a video or two. Or the other thing would be to send you that information I think through the note keepers, and because I believe it's very interesting and very much related to our discussion of today. And I hope that with this lecture we triggered your thinking and maybe choices in the future. And I look forward to maybe working with you in the next course. Okay, so thank you.